Welcome to the Less Stressed Lawyer Show.
Hello and welcome back to the Less Stressed Lawyer Show with Ms. Olivia Vizachero. Olivia is a former attorney turned life and business coach for lawyers. She helps ambitious attorneys stop overthinking, set boundaries, and take bold action so they can build a practice and a life they actually love. I'm Evan Mack, and today we're diving into the habit many lawyers struggle with, perfectionism, and the toll it takes on both your practice and your personal life. This is perfectionism and its impact on your practice and life. Ms. Olivia, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Miss Olivia, how do you explain perfectionism to attorneys that you coach?
So, on the most basic level, perfectionism is a desire to strive for or achieve flawlessness, right? And we see that when people need things to be a particular way. If it doesn't all go according to plan, then it's ruined. But a lot of the people that come to work with me really don't think that they're perfectionistic until we dive into the coaching and they start to see their perfectionist tendencies. So I've actually identified 20 different perfectionist tendencies that I show people. This is actually perfectionism. So I won't go through all 20 of them, but taking too long to do things where you really nitpick and constantly tweak, that's an example of perfectionism. Not getting started on goals because you're afraid to fail is a version of perfectionism. Thinking things should take less time than they do. That's a huge one that clients struggle with. They always think they should be able to do stuff faster.
Right.
And I teach them, if you wouldn't cut anything out or reduce time you spent doing anything, it should have taken you exactly as long as it did. People will quit when they're pursuing a goal really early on because it's messy and they don't immediately get the win that they want. So that's a big one. Letting one negative event in a day or a week ruin the entire week. We call that all or nothing thinking. So these are just examples of what perfectionism looks like in practice. And I find that once people understand how it manifests, they start to really understand, oh, I do struggle with perfectionism. And I think everyone struggles with certain perfectionist tendencies, maybe not all 20, but certain ones will definitely pop up and they have an impact on our personal life, our professional life. It really wreaks havoc.
Why do you think this shows up maybe more so in the legal profession?
Totally. And I do think it shows up more in the legal profession. One reason is that I think it comes from academia. We get taught that there are right answers to things, and then we take that concept and apply it to our careers. There's a right way to do something. There are right answers. There are right judgment calls or decisions to make. And that's just not true. A lot of times there are different ways to approach a problem. The example I always use, I used to work for an attorney. He deeply believed in exhaustive cross-examination. So he would impeach on every issue he could, no matter how big or small. And I know other attorneys have a totally different viewpoint. They think that is not the right way to go about it. And instead, they want to pick maybe 3 things that are big issues and just focus on those. And one's not right, the other's not wrong, and vice versa. It's just a preference. It's a difference of opinion. So there are a lot of different ways to perhaps achieve the same result. There are different ways to achieve different results, and there isn't one right standard. So in order to overcome your perfectionist tendencies, you really have to get rid of that idea that there are right and wrong answers like there are on the bar exam or on a math test. There are different approaches, and a lot of different approaches will work just fine.
But on the surface, perfectionism can sound like a good trait. How does it actually hold lawyers back?
I used to think the same thing. I used to wear my perfectionism as a badge of honor. I think when I did on-campus interviews, I actually sold that as the response to the question, what's one negative trait that you have? And then you kind of make it sound like a good one. So I would do that with being a perfectionist. And I really took so much pride in it. But when you zoom out a little bit and actually look at what the cost of being a perfectionist is, you see the negative impact it has on your work. So number one, a ton of lost progress because you slow yourself down. You waste time making tweaks and changes that really don't have a positive ROI on the time that you're spending on them. You really increase your stress because you're aiming for a standard that is not attainable. Perfect isn't something that we can achieve. All right. There are always going to be flaws. It also begs the question, perfect to who? So people have different opinions on the best approach here. So if we're aiming for something that we can't achieve, we're going to feel really anxious, stressed, overwhelmed. And we add that negative emotion to our day-to-day work experience completely unnecessarily. People will also procrastinate because they're perfectionistic. They won't want to start because they're afraid of doing a bad job. For me, it was also an escape hatch because if you procrastinate, you're never judged on your best work. You end up being judged on rushed work. And if you get negative feedback on it, you're like, that totally makes sense to me why they didn't think it was very good. It wasn't because I'm not competent or capable, but because I just didn't give myself enough time. So you really protect yourself from ever being evaluated on your best attempt at something. And because you slow yourself down or you overwork or you procrastinate, you just decrease your productivity and efficiency. So you get less done. And if you're in a billable hour world, sometimes you can't bill for that work or you're missing deadlines because of it, which again just leads to a decreased reputation with your colleagues or clients and a lot of stress that results from that, a lot of worry.
What are some of the day-to-day ways perfectionism slows attorneys down or adds that stress to their life?
Yeah. So the one I used to be famous for was making a 3-minute email take 30 minutes, where you type the first sentence and then you delete it, and then you type it again, and then you delete it, and you're just wordsmithing stuff.
Yeah.
So you're pouring way more time into something than is necessary. That was a big one that I was guilty of. Another one for me was not entering my time. And I watch this happen with my clients quite a bit now. And we do this for a couple different perfectionistic reasons. One is people won't like how many hours they build in a day. So they won't enter their time because they don't want to face the music. For me, if I didn't enter Monday's time and it was Wednesday, I also wouldn't have entered Tuesdays because Monday wasn't in. And then I wouldn't enter Monday or Tuesday on Wednesday. So I wouldn't enter Wednesday's time. It like had to go in the perfect order. And that's just an artificial standard that I was imposing on myself, creating a worse result because it had to happen in a particular way. And if it didn't, it was wrong. Another way that I used to procrastinate was having perfectionism around start times. So I would tell myself, oh, I'll start at 10 a.m. on this one task. And then I might be on Instagram procrastinating and I'm like, oh, just one more minute. And then it's 10:02. And I would create this infrastructure in my head where I couldn't start on that task. Now I needed a clean start time. So I'd say, all right, 10:30. And then 10:31 would happen and I'd push it back a little bit more. So those are some really small ways, letting one bad thing that happens in the day ruin the entire day. And then really struggling with accepting quote unquote negative feedback is another thing that I see perfectionists struggle with. They have the expectation that they do everything right the first time, even when they're in a new practice area or they're doing something on a case that they haven't done before and they're still learning. They expect themselves to hit it out of the park. And when they get a red line or feedback or comments that suggest they change something, they really make it a moral failing on their part, like something's wrong with them, they're a failure, they're not competent, rather than seeing what it is, a more experienced person, either having a different preference, like both ways might be just fine, but they just prefer you to do it one way versus the way you originally did it. Or they have more experience than you, as well they should, because they've been practicing longer, and they're trying to teach you something, and you could use it as a learning opportunity, but instead you use it against yourself and really weaponize it to beat yourself up and feel badly about the work that you're doing.
So, Olivia, how can this perfectionism affect the lawyer's personal life, maybe outside of work?
Totally, and it does. So a big one that I see is quitting on personal goals really early on because you expect to decide, I'm working on this, and from this point forward, it will all go seamlessly. That does not happen. Pursuing goals or trying new things tends to be a clunky, messy process. People need to let it be messy. And if they don't, if they have a strong aversion to messiness or failure, really failing your way forward, learning from what didn't work and then making tweaks, they'll quit very early on. So they won't achieve those goals. Never getting started on projects in the first place. And this can be big projects like renovating your house or just cleaning your house. It's like if I can't do a full, thorough, deep clean of every room, top to bottom, all in one day, then what's the point? And then we just keep the clutter. But the biggest way that I see it come up for people is other oriented perfectionism. So that's where you impose your perfectionist standards onto the people in your personal life. We do this professionally as well, but it really wreaks havoc on our personal lives. Think of your spouse loading the dishwasher and they do it the wrong way, or they don't get you the right gift for a holiday, or they say something in a social setting and when you get in the car you're yelling at them because they shouldn't have said that. They said the wrong thing. You think there's a right way to behave, a right way to do things, and then when they don't act that way because they're humans who have their own preferences and free will, you get really frustrated. You think they shouldn't do that, they're doing it wrong, and then you nitpick and criticize. And over time, that truly destroys relationships. So if you're perfectionistic with yourself, you are likely perfectionistic with other people, and learning how to change that thinking that there's not one right way, there's different ways. And the dishes will still get washed if it's not loaded perfectly. And if they don't, you can run it again. It's fine. Really figuring out like what matters and what doesn't in your life, and what hills you want to die on and which things you want to let go.
Awesome. A lot of attorneys equate high standards with perfectionism. What's the difference between the two?
This is such a great question because I think it can go either way. I think certain times high standards may not be attainable. And then in other instances, high standards can be attained. So the trick here is really to understand, what is the standard? We want to measure this objectively. It should be very specific. My standard is I should be able to come in with like a clipboard or a chart and check boxes. Did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? What a lot of people do is they won't use the word perfect because, at least intellectually, they know perfect isn't attainable. So instead, they'll replace it with best. I want to do the best job. I want to get the best outcome for this client, but they're not clear on what that would actually look like. So force yourself to define best in a way that's measurable, and you can start to see, is that in my control to attain? Is it not? If it involves the judge making a particular decision, there are certain things that you can do to maybe make that more likely, but there are some parts of that that are outside of your control. So my suggestion is for the high standard to be something that's completely within your control. It's not reliant on someone else, what opposing counsel offers you, what the opposing party agrees to accept. Those things we don't have complete control over. So don't measure yourself against that.
So, Olivia, what's one mindset shift you teach lawyers to help them move past this perfectionism?
The first one is just coming to terms with the fact that perfect isn't possible. Right? And again, like I said earlier, it begs the question, perfect to who? I might think something's perfect. Someone else might think it's a disaster, right? Like if you don't like surprise parties. If you do, you might think that's the perfect way to celebrate a birthday. If you hate it, then you will think it's the worst way to celebrate a birthday. And obviously that's a silly example, but thinking about the work that we do, there are different opinions about what best is or what good is. So just recognizing that it's subjective, and in most instances, perfect isn't possible. And then from there, really deciding that there isn't one right way to do things. There are a lot of different approaches. A lot of them can achieve the same result, and just being a little bit more open-minded about different approaches and their success rates or the results they can create, that helps people start to break up that need to achieve perfection.
Can you share an example of a client that overcame that perfectionism and what changed for them as a result?
Yeah, I see this happen a ton with marketing. So I work with a lot of lawyers on showing up on social media or even networking in person in order
Right.
to meet people, tell people what they do, and make offers to help people when it makes sense. And that's sort
Right.
of the framework that we use to create clients. But people will be so perfectionistic about what they write in a social media post to get their message out there. And they'll start a post and then they'll say, oh, this isn't very good. And then they'll start another one and they'll get halfway
Mhm.
through it and they'll, that's not good either. I have a new idea. And they'll just keep idea hopping. So when we recognize, okay, you're aiming for perfection, you don't even know what perfection would look like here because we haven't articulated a standard. I help them shift to define what a good enough social media post would contain. And for me, I teach a framework where you identify a specific problem that your clients might be facing. You explain why it's a problem. You explain what causes the problem, and then you offer the solution to that problem and teach them something valuable right now. And then you simply say, if you have this problem, I can help you with it. And you tell them how to reach out to you. So
Mm.
when you have, again, that checklist, that rubric for things, you've
Right.
defined what good enough is, and you can work in accordance with that standard. And then once you've checked those boxes, you're done and you can release it to the world. Now, you might have to feel uncomfortable, worried that people won't like it or maybe a little insecure about the work that you've done. But
Mhm.
we want to just get the standard met that we've articulated and then put it out into the world and then focus not on what happens with that one, but on taking more action in accordance with that standard. And people have really changed their practices, creating more clients, having more demand so they're able to raise their rates, things like that, because they overcome their perfectionism. I also coach people to do the same exact thing, define what good enough means when it comes to brief writing or contract drafting. What's a good enough contract? What's a good enough brief? And you just go through, and again, same concept, check boxes. So it has an intro, it
Hmm.
has a fact section, a legal standard, an analysis section. For the legal analysis, we identify the key arguments, we IRAC them. What's the issue? What's the rule? What's our analysis? And conclusion. And then a conclusion at the end of the brief, proper citations, exhibits if necessary. You're supporting your argument with relevant facts and case law. Those are all things that you can check off as you go through. And if you've done that, you've written a good enough brief rather than, I'm
Hmm.
not sure what a good enough brief is, but I'll know it when I see it. People actually won't know. So they're able to work so much faster when they've articulated that standard
Right.
and feel proud of the work that they do rather than what our brains love to do when we don't articulate the standard. It's like, I'm not sure what good enough is, but it's definitely not this. And we
Right.
always feel like we're underperforming and missing the mark.
So, Olivia, for anyone listening who knows perfectionism is keeping them stuck, what's one practical step they can take this week to start moving forward?
Yeah. So it's defining good enough. Whatever it is that you're working on, if you're catching yourself get stuck, if you're catching yourself quitting early on because it's not going as planned, get really clear on what your expectation is. Just articulating your expectation out loud will shift things for you because normally, if you allow yourself to answer, what's my expectation here, very honestly and sincerely, and be as candid with yourself as possible,
Hmm.
you'll realize you're holding yourself to a standard that's not attainable. So if you're feeling like you didn't get enough work done today, all right, what's my expectation here? Well, I wanted to get through everything on my list. It's like, all right, do you have time to get through everything on your list? No, there's like 50 hours worth of work here, and I'm only working an 8-hour day. So, of course, that's not going to happen. All
Right.
right, well, what would good enough be? How about getting through 7 hours of planned work in an 8-hour day, leaving a little bit of time for humaning? Or you got an offer for a client and you're really frustrated. All right, what was my expectation here? Well, I thought I would get them 100% of our requested relief.
Right.
All right. Is that realistic? Has that happened on your cases before? When you're reaching a settlement rather than, a trial where you reach a verdict? And the answer is probably not. People have to compromise, and the other side's not going to agree to 100%, nor would you agree to 100% of what they want. So
Hmm.
you're going to meet somewhere in the middle. What if you define good enough as something that typically happens rather than something that never happens.
Wow. Good stuff, Olivia. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Awesome. And thank you all for joining us for this episode of the Less Stressed Lawyer Show. If perfectionism has been draining your time, energy, or confidence, know that there's another way forward. To learn more about working with Ms. Olivia, visit oliviavizachero.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review, and share this with someone that might find this information helpful and have to help these lawyers break free from perfectionism. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.